Welcome to BlockFlix Rewind, where we bring your favorite movies back to life with quick recaps, highlights, and fresh perspectives. Let's rewind the story. The movie begins with David King, owner of Stackin' Hits Records. 5 years earlier, he sold the company's shares, but now he wants them back to regain control. David has a wife named Pam and a son named Trey. Today is Trey's basketball match, so David goes with him to watch it. Before the game, Trey shares that his friend Sula is a talented singer he admires and asks David to give him a chance. David promises he will. Later, David meets Kyle, the son of his driver Paul, and cheers him on for the match. Soon after, the focus shifts to David negotiating with his business partner Patrick, urging him to sell his shares. Patrick resists at first, but eventually agrees. Excited, David returns home and tells Pam he is buying back the company. When she asks about the money, he explains he will mortgage his penthouse and everything he owns. Suddenly, David gets a call saying his son has been kidnapped. Shocked, he tells Pam, and they immediately contact the police. Detectives Earl, Higgins, and Bell arrive, and David informs them that the kidnapper demands $17.5 million. Earl urges him to trust their plan for Trey's safety. Paul steps in, reminding David of his loyalty and offering help if needed. Soon after, Pam brings news that Trey has been found. The police return him home safely, and the parents are relieved. But Paul anxiously asks about his own son. Higgins explains the kidnapper mistakenly took Kyle instead of Trey. Devastated, Paul admits he has no way to pay such a ransom. Trey explains that he and Kyle slipped out of camp for food, and Kyle never returned after going for pizza. The kidnapper calls again, and Earl instructs David to keep him talking so they can trace the call. David insists the boy is not his son, but the kidnapper threatens to kill Kyle unless he gets the $17.5 million in 1,000 Swiss franc notes. Before the call can be traced, the line goes dead. Paul begs David for the money, promising repayment, but David stresses the ransom is too high. Patrick later warns that if Kyle dies, the public will blame David. Moved, David, Pam, and Trey assure Paul they will arrange the money to save Kyle. Relieved, Paul feels a glimmer of hope. David arranges $17.5 million, converts it into 1,000 Swiss franc notes, and places them inside a black backpack. Detective Earl hides a tracker in the bag. Soon, the kidnapper calls, asking if the money is ready. David confirms, but the kidnapper also demands his wife's Cartier bracelet. He instructs David to board the 4 train at Borough Hall at 11 a.m., saying he will send further directions by text. Earl assures David that officers are stationed at every stop, while he and Bell will stay with him on the train and Higgins will follow the tracker. Wearing a vest, David takes the money bag and heads to Borough Hall with the detectives. Once on the train, the kidnapper calls again, ordering him to walk between cars. David obeys, but when told to put the bag down, he insists on seeing Kyle first. At that moment, one accomplice pulls the train's brake, jolting it. The bag slips from David's hands and falls below, where another accomplice catches it and passes it to a man on a motorcycle. Higgins tracks the signal, catches a kidnapper, but finds the bag empty. Soon after, Kyle is abandoned at Yankee Stadium. At the hospital, Earl questions him. Kyle says he was tied in a bathtub, never saw their faces, but remembers a song that played repeatedly. He hums the tune for them. The next day at David's company, his partner Dobb warns him that he has 2 weeks to pay. Otherwise, he will lose his penthouse, artwork, and all his assets. Later, David listens to a playlist Trey gave him and hears the same song Kyle mentioned. He plays it for Kyle, who confirms it's the kidnapper's tune. David identifies the rapper as Young Feline and insists he is the kidnapper. Earl and the others, however, dismiss his claim, telling him not to interfere and to let them handle the case their own way. Paul asks David if he is certain Young Feline is the kidnapper. David insists he is, though he admits he doesn't know where to find him. Paul quickly searches with his friends and tracks down Feline's address. Together, they visit his house. Feline's wife opens the door, immediately recognizing David. She warmly welcomes him inside and explains that her husband once idolized David, regarding him as his biggest inspiration. However, after being repeatedly ignored, he broke down completely. When David asks where Phelan is, she reveals he is at the studio and gives them the location. David and Paul head to the studio. Inside, Phelan is performing when David cuts the music and confronts him. Phelan admits he once considered David a father figure but felt abandoned. Suddenly, he pulls out a gun and tries to shoot. David narrowly avoids the shot, and Phelan rushes outside, shooting Paul instead. David chases him onto a train, where the two fight until David overpowers him. Meanwhile, Earl, Higgins, and Bell search Phelan's home and discover the stolen money hidden under the bed. At the hospital, David visits Paul with Pam and Trey. He asks Paul to join him in launching a new label, but Paul declines, saying it's time for him and Kyle to move on. Outside the court, Phelan's popularity grows. He becomes the most streamed artist in the world, with crowds demanding his release. Earl informs David that Phelan is willing to confess, but only if David agrees to meet him. David learns Phelan faces a 26-year sentence. In prison, Phelan tells David they should work together, boasting about his success and begging to be signed. David refuses, saying he has left Stack and Hits Records and will now start a label under his full control. Enraged, Phelan pleads in vain. Later, David meets a young artist named Sula. After hearing her perform, he signs her to his new label, bringing the story to an end. Thanks for watching BlockFlix Rewind. If you enjoyed this recap, hit like, subscribe, and catch the full movie on BlockFlix TV. Until next time, keep the reels turning.